So thank you for joining this webinar today. I'm here with James from Equinix, Bruno from ID Quantique, and Axel as well from ID Quantique. I'm Jean-Sébastien Pégon, managing the telecom vertical within ID Quantique. Thank you for joining. While we're waiting, everybody joining, I will give a quick introduction. So we were originally planning to have a physical event at Equinix, but as you understand, with current circumstances, we decided to move and to webinar. So thank you for everybody who could join today. We understand it's challenging times, and hope you're not directly affected by the virus yourself, but we also need to try to continue business and at least to provide connectivity and secure connectivity to our customers who are frequently working from home today. So we still see that the crisis has generated lots of data on the network. We see huge increase of data usage, and of course the security of the data in transit and data centers is critical and important. So we'll give you a few hints and information on how to use quantum technology for data communication and key storage today. Thank you again. So I see more people are joining. Welcome everybody. I will give you a few just technical information. So you're all muted, obviously for quality reasons. You have the possibility, however, to raise your hands and to raise questions, written questions during the presentations. I will be moderating and answering questions either during the presentations or after, and we'll open the floor to everybody during 10 minutes at the end of the webinar. So I guess that's all. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything. Panelists, yeah, if you have quality audio issues, you may have noticed you can join by phone as well, in case you're struggling with the GoToWebinar web interface. So I will hand over to James. Thank you, Equinix, for supporting us on this project. As you will see, Equinix help us to demonstrate the capabilities of quantum communication and quantum security solutions. And so James will give us an introduction about Equinix, and then Bruno will hand over. Thank you, James. Up to you.
Jean-Seb, thank you. And good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for joining us today. We're absolutely delighted to be supporting ID Quantique in this webinar this morning. Very sorry not to be with you personally in Geneva today, but hopefully we can put that right in due course when the current situation has ameliorated. The first thing I'm going to do is turn off my screen because my internet here is not too good, so I'm going to do that. So I will see you later, but hopefully you will still be able to hear me. So first thing I'm going to do is give a brief introduction to Equinix and what we do, and I'm just hoping that this is going to work, which it doesn't appear to be at the moment.
That's perfect for now.
Oh, there we go, good. Thank you. So for those of you that don't know, Equinix is the world's leading co-location and interconnection company. We were founded on the basis of co-locating customers' physical equipment, their servers, and so on. But more recently, we've been concentrating on the world of interconnection. The idea being that for whatever end the come with it, you can interconnect digitally and privately to your customers, to your partners, and to other suppliers, such as the hyperscaler cloud companies like Amazon and Azure, and any other corporate service that happens to be connected to it. And what you see in front of you is a sort of brief list of our beliefs. We believe that the future of IT infrastructure is everywhere, and that the role of the data center itself, it may sound strange for us to say it, is shrinking as interconnection becomes more important and the cloud becomes all pervasive. But it's a hybrid world, blending cloud and the edge. We'll come on to the edge later on, but essentially this means that workloads have to be addressed where they are required and not back at corporate HQ. That future infrastructure is an ecosystem of partners, and I think really what we're doing today with ID Quantique is a very good example of that, of companies of different sorts coming together to build an ecosystem that achieves an end. And finally, that such ecosystems are locally and privately interconnecting. And we have more literature you can read at your leisure about this, but essentially what this is saying is that interconnection, we believe, is becoming the primary method that corporations will use to communicate. Let's see if I can go to transfer, please. So, sorry about this, it's not moving forward. Oh, there we go, good. A very brief run through of where we come from as an organization. We were started in the late 1990s to act as a peering point for the fiber optic lines in the US. So our foundation, if you like, lies with the internet and fiber optics. We then expanded as the web and the content that it provides sort of began to really make its presence felt in the early 2000s. And then electronic trading was the first ecosystem that we became involved in. This was all about low latency and close proximity, and essentially in the e-trading markets that you find around the world. Cloud, the sort of fourth block in this, then came to bear on us, bringing with it this added complexity of more connectivity routes being required between a variety of service providers and companies. And finally, we have the current state today of digital ecosystems, where, as you can see, there is this huge block of these 5 different types of company that exist in what I sometimes refer to as a sort of rubber band ball. But essentially, what it means is that everyone has to be able to interconnect to everyone else, and that's what we provide. So what do we mean really by digital business transformation and these primary components that you can see in front of you here? Well, firstly, the digital edge. Now, we mentioned that on the first page, but effectively, the way to look at the digital edge is to think of it as being where you as a person, you as an organization require your compute to take place, require some of your data to be stored, all in the name of giving performance, all in the name of giving a quality experience to whoever is using it. So in other words, your edge is where you find it, but it isn't at corporate HQ, I think is the important thing to say. Digital infrastructure supports that by providing cores, regional cores. What this means is that, for example, if we look at the map of the world in front of us here, if the usage was on the west coast of the US and the data center happened to be in France in the old way of doing it, the hub and spoke way, you had all that distance, all that latency to travel. Nowadays, what it means is that you have these hubs so you can service people more effectively. And finally, on the right-hand side, we have digital exchange, which really is where organizations come together and they share information digitally and securely. This can only be achieved if you have the best architecture. As you can see on the left, that is the traditional method of doing it, the hub and spoke method that I referred to. And that brings with it certain issues, which you can see listed out there, but resiliency, user experience, penetration attacks is interesting because, of course, what it means is that the attack surface, if you like, is already quite large, usually done via the internet. It means that people can attack it very easily. On the right-hand side, you have this new way you can see the regional hubs that we discussed in the previous slides, where they are. And that brings with it, again, I think certain benefits, starting with resiliency and ending up with capacity control at all the needed points. Oh, there we go. And this requires a platform to do it on. We would suggest that it requires the right platform. And the purpose of this really is just to show you that Equinix has spent time and money in deploying itself across, I think, what are primarily the primary financial hubs around the world, but nevertheless, obviously, hubs of great economic activity. And this platform allows you to interconnect easily and securely between all those points. You also need access to the largest ecosystems, and these are the 5 basic ecosystems that Equinix trades in. Firstly, on the left-hand side from our beginning with networks, you can see there is financial services in the middle. But nowadays, really, much of it is focused on enterprises, as we discover more and more that these 5 blocks begin to trade together, these 5 ecosystems, if you like, begin to merge together and actually interconnect properly. And really, this relates to all the industries that you can see there. And I think, again, this is the important point to make. And when we think about ID Quantique and what they're doing with security, that security is not limited to any one organization, any one enterprise, any one ecosystem. It really crosses all of them. Okay, and I think that illustrates well that this addresses all industries globally. Okay. Finally, I'd like to say a couple of words about what Equinix is doing in Switzerland. As you can see from this diagram, we have 5 data centers in Zurich and in Geneva, which are interconnected between themselves, as you can see from this diagram here, where we see the outline of what goes on in Zurich against what happens in Geneva, and of course we have the link to CERN that exists there as well. This is a sort of a slightly more detailed map of where we find ourselves in Geneva, which of course is really the topic of conversation today. But as you can see, we maintain 2 data centers, or IBXs, International Business Exchanges, as we call them. And you'll be glad to hear that is it from me. But once again, thank you so much for joining today. It's a great privilege to have you all along. And now I'm going to hand back to the people who you've really come to hear about, namely ID Quantique.
Thank you very much, James. We have now Axel, who will give us an introduction while Bruno is preparing the slides, and we see the slides now. Thank you. So Axel is the head of the Quantum Safe BU. Thank you, Axel, being with us today.
Thank you, Jean-Sébastien, and thank you everybody for joining. I want to spend a couple of words. I think we are entering the quantum decade, so I would title it, which means there's always opportunity, but there are also some threats. And what you see today in the partnership, you seek first solutions which provide real value to our customers. And that's something which is very important if a new technology involves, and that's the case with quantum computing on one side and with the quantum cryptography on the other side. There are always opportunity to change business models and also increase the whole operational setup of a company. And what you will learn today, and I'm looking forward for more questions and discussions on this, is how you can participate as a company to get more advantages out of this technology, which is now evolving and is becoming ready for operational use. So enjoying the presentation from Bruno. Bruno, it's up to you to convince our customers about the sexiness of quantum cryptography. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, Thank you for being with me. So I will switch off the video and let you concentrate on the screen as well. I think it's more important. So let's start with that. And what we will be discussing is really how we can get cybersecurity in an era where we have a quantum computer. And I will go through briefly through all of that. So the outline of the presentation, we will start with explaining a bit about the quantum computer. That will be quite brief, and the need for quantum security, quantum safe security. How can we keep security in the time where there is a quantum computer? The tools we can use to do that are three, and we will very briefly see some of them. Quantum key generation, how to generate keys better. Quantum resistant algorithm, of course, is changing the algorithm suite we use today, which will be attacked by the quantum computers, something which will resist it. And of course, quantum key distribution. And you will hear more about quantum key distribution, obviously, from Jean-Sébastien afterwards. All right, so let's start with the quantum computer. Maybe. Yes. So let's start with a quantum computer. Of course, in a short presentation, it's impossible to explain the details how a quantum computer works. The main idea is that instead of computing with bits, zeros and ones, we normally use with a classical computer, the quantum computer will work with qubits. Qubits are quantum objects. They can be in a state 0 and 1, but we can also build with this quantum state something which we cannot do classically, which is a coherent superposition. So a quantum state can be a 0, can be a 1, but it can also be something in between, which is really what we call a coherent superposition. And the fact that we can build this coherent superposition adds another dimension, if you want, to the computing you can do. And somehow, the way you can understand a quantum computer, it's like a massively parallel computer. Every time you do a computation, you can actually add some more paths to the computing trajectory, and you can follow all these trajectories in one computation instead of having to do it one after the other. So it's this huge parallelism which will bring the very large increase in speed you can have with a quantum computer. So it's not a real speed, it's more like a computation will be done in less steps. And that's really the way the quantum computer will enable to do things which you cannot do with a classical computer. The end result is that some computation which were not possible with a classical computer can become feasible. And of course, it's changing a lot of things, first giving new opportunities, but also, unfortunately, giving new threats. So I will go briefly to the opportunities. I call it the bright side of the quantum computer. And because you can do this new computation, you can, for example, use a quantum computer to find new materials and chemicals. You can calculate the molecular structure in a much easier way with a quantum computer. You can also find optimization. And there have been several attempts to use the quantum computer for optimization purposes. And another one is machine learning, for example, or artificial intelligence, where you can identify, for example, people in a crowd. Maybe we don't want that, but a quantum computer will do that much better than a classical computer. So because of all these interesting things, obviously there is a race to go and manufacture a quantum computer. And here I only show you a few of the companies working on this. You will have the slide afterwards, so I will not go into details to all of that. But as you all know, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Intel, and many others are trying to manufacture a quantum computer. Actually, they have already, most of these companies have already some results, and they can do rather small size quantum computer, which cannot do many calculations yet, but it's just a beginning, obviously. The race is also on in the East, because in China also there is a large investment in quantum computing. So you see that because of the fact that the quantum computer will allow you to do new things, many people in the world are trying to do that. But there is another side, and I call it the dark side of the quantum computer, and the fact that the quantum computer does some computation faster. One of the computation it can do is the factorization of large integers. And the quantum computer can do that thanks to an algorithm which was discovered by Peter Shor already quite a few years ago. And he showed that with a quantum computer, you could factorize in polynomial time, which means somehow that now it's as easy to factorize a large number, as you see here on my screen, than it is to do a multiplication. Before that, if I give you two large numbers, which I can show you here, let me try and see if I can do that. Yeah. If I show you here two large numbers, and if you take a few seconds, you could do the calculation yourself and calculate the product. However, if I give you the product and ask you to find these two numbers, this is rather difficult. A classical computer will take a long time to do it, and a quantum computer actually will do it much faster. The result of that is that a quantum computer can break what is known as public key or asymmetric cryptography, because all this cryptography is based on factoring, and therefore if you can break factoring, you break this kind of cryptography. Why is this a problem? Because asymmetric crypto is almost everywhere in cybersecurity. TLS uses asymmetric crypto. Message authentication will use asymmetric crypto. You can forge signature, and of course, network encryption will become insecure. So the quantum computer will be a major threat to all the cybersecurity infrastructure, and that's why so many people now are interested in following what's going on. When will this happen? There have been lots of discussions. Initially, people thought it would take forever. I think now most people believe that the quantum computer, which is large enough to do cryptography, of course, you need enough qubits to play with to do the calculation, is something between 5 or 10 years. So I would be a little bit, I wouldn't say either optimistic or pessimistic as you see it, but really maybe 10 years. But in 10 years, we believe there will be a quantum computer. So the bottom line is really that within maximum 10 to 15 years, there will be a quantum computer, and it will destroy a large part of our security infrastructure. Therefore, what is at risk today is really issues of confidentiality, because today, whatever you send on the internet can be downloaded, and therefore a quantum computer could decrypt it later. So you store the information encrypted today, but as soon as you have a quantum computer, you can decrypt it. So any information which you send on the internet might be understood, might be decrypted within 10, 15 years maximum. Another thing which is important, another risk is about authentication. If you have a long-lived infrastructure which you build today, which requires authentication, you need to put the right kind of authentication which will be solid against the quantum computer even in 5 to 10 years, because your infrastructure will stay for a long time. So we do need new solutions, and that's what we call quantum safe cryptography, or quantum safe security, sorry. I think I discussed that already, so let's move to the way, the recommended path to do quantum safe. We suggest 3 different tools. One is quantum random number generation. The other is, of course, post-quantum cryptography. And the third is quantum key distribution. So we will go through that one after the other in a little bit more detail. Let's start with quantum key generation. All cryptography today is based on random number. Whatever you do, when you do any cryptographic, when you do cryptography, basically, the first thing you do is to generate a random number. You have to do something which an attacker would not in advance know what you are doing. So the problem is that random numbers are not easy to generate, especially with a classical computer which is deterministic. You cannot really generate randomness. So without some specific hardware, you cannot generate random numbers. And in an interesting twist, quantum technologies can be used to generate random numbers. Quantum mechanics is a non-deterministic theory. So by using the principle of quantum mechanics, it is rather easy to generate good random numbers. That's actually what we are doing also in ID Quantique. We have a very small quantum random number generator, which we use in all our system, and also we plan to use it in, if you want, classical cryptography as well, to generate good randomness. The other tool we can use, we have for us, is the so-called quantum resistant algorithm. And you probably know that in the last few years, the NIST in the US has been working on standardizing new algorithms which will replace the standard algorithm which will be destroyed by the quantum computer and which can be used in all over cryptography. So I show you here a timeline. It started really in 2017. And the idea is within a few years, we should have some new algorithms which will resist the quantum computer. That's really the aim of what is called the NIST process. Today, we're at the second round. We're somewhere here. They should select a candidate in the third round. So you see, we went from 69 to 29, from 69 to 29 candidates, 9 for signature remain and 17 for key exchange. Third round will probably be another selection, down select a few of these, and then hopefully there will be new standards within 2 or 3 years. And that's really what the NIST hopes to do. I think that's fine, and that's a very interesting way to achieve quantum safe security. However, we also see that there are some risks associated to this new post-quantum algorithm, which we can classify this risk into 2: classical risk and really quantum risk. So the classical risk is, first of all, you don't really, all these algorithms are based on what is called complexity theory, and they don't really have a security proof. So what it means is that they also, we believe they are safe. We're not absolutely certain it will remain so. Another thing is also we understand rather well the asymptotic security. So if we take an algorithm, we believe that if the parameters are right, the system is safe. But we have an issue with the choice of parameters. Just give you a very simple example because that's probably the easiest. Let's go back to factoring. If we take a large enough number, of course it's hard to factorize, but how long does it has to be? Historically, when you started with RSA, you started with a rather small number, and then you realized they were not safe enough, so you had to increase the size. And that's exactly the same with post-quantum, that if you choose a set of parameters, you may not have the right security, or you may have the right security today, but you may find out in a few years that the right security is not here anymore. And of course, the other things which can happen is progress in computing power, for example, and people, if the computer, classical computer even, is much faster, it can break these systems. I think more importantly, you also have the quantum risks. The quantum risk means that all these new algorithms are not susceptible to attacks by the Shor algorithm, and which was used to factorize numbers. However, there have been very little work so far on new quantum algorithm which would allow you to attack this new system. And of course, first of all, you don't have a real quantum computer which you can use to do that, and it's a very new domain, so there are very few people working on that. The fear is that in a few years, when you have all these bright young people working with quantum algorithm, quantum computers trying to build these new algorithms, obviously one of them will come up with a new way to do something, and this new way would be to break one of the algorithms which has been chosen for by the NIST. So that's really, I think, the most important risk in the near future is that as soon as you have a quantum computer, people will start finding new algorithms and find new ways to attack what we will choose. The third thing which we can mention is only, that's a side issue a little bit, but it's a standardization issue. We still have a few algorithms today, we don't know which one to choose, and therefore until we know which one has been recommended, we can choose one which is not the best one. But that's work in progress. We hope that within a few years that will be solved. And I think in this time, we should also remember that there may be unpredictable new vulnerabilities. I mean, we really don't know what will happen with this algorithm. And we all know today that something totally unexpected can happen, which changes completely everything we thought was, we believed in before. And that could happen very well with these post-quantum systems as well. So what we say that we have to be a little bit careful. The post-quantum is probably a good way to go forward. But for very high security, we also want to have other solutions. And the other solution we promote, and the one which we use in Geneva in the OpenQKD project, which Jean-Sébastien will talk to you more about, is quantum key distribution. Here, I only want to say a few words to really introduce very quickly a quantum key distribution, just the principle. So quantum key distribution is one of the elements, of course, of cryptography. It will work with symmetric key. And I show you here the basics of symmetric cryptography. Alice wants to send a secret message. She encrypts it using a secret key and sends a scrambled message to Bob, which can decrypt it using the same secret key. We know how to do this very well. We believe we have quantum safe systems to do the symmetric key encryption and decryption. The most well-known one is AES, but of course there are others. The one element which may be missing in this is how do you bring the secret key from Alice to Bob? Because Alice and Bob needs to share this secret key, they need to find a way to transmit it. It's called the key exchange mechanism. And quantum key distribution would do that using a quantum channel. So in fact, we use photons to send the data from Alice to Bob in such a way that if an eavesdropper will try to eavesdrop on the quantum channel, the eavesdropper will be detected by Alice and Bob. Quantum mechanics says that any attempt of measuring a quantum system will modify the system. And we will use exactly this principle in order to be able to manufacture a secret key which can be shared by Alice and Bob using the quantum properties. Again, in this short presentation, I don't really have time to go through the details. Jean-Sébastien will explain how to implement that, how we can use that in the real world. On my side, I will conclude with, let's say, a few bullet points, really. What is important to remember is that there is a true risk today on cybersecurity because of the quantum computer. I think most people, a few years ago, it was a struggle to make people understand that. I think now people have become more aware of this issue. And therefore, we know we need today new solutions. What is really at risk is confidentiality of data with long lifetime, because whatever we send today can be eavesdropped and will be deciphered later. So that's really the main thing today is if ever you have confidential data and you want to send it over the internet or something, you have to be careful. The solution is probably a mixture of this new post-quantum algorithm and quantum key distribution to provide quantum safe security. You will probably see that the quantum resistant algorithm or post-quantum algorithm can be used in some application, and probably the highest level of security on some application will require quantum key distribution. Of course, quantum key distribution cannot be used everywhere. There are some physical limitations. We need to build a quantum channel between Alice and Bob. Today, the quantum channels are restricted in length. We can only have something like 80 to 100 kilometers. But we believe that in 5 to 10 years, we will have probably quantum repeaters, which will allow us to increase the size of the quantum channel to any distance. And today, we can also use what is called trusted nodes, so we can already do some extension, and Jean-Sébastien will talk about that. So QKD may not be used everywhere, but it can be used today to improve security on the high-valued link. And the last thing I wanted to mention for people who need to do that is really the first thing in order to know about quantum safe is to do what is called a quantum assessment, to know what you have in your cybersecurity system, to know where are your vulnerabilities, and to try and see what would be the first thing you have to address in order to go to quantum safe. So that's really what I wanted to say today, and I'm just within my 20 minutes. So thank you, and you please forward your questions in writing, and we will address them at the end of the webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bruno. We will continue with the survey. So you should see a survey screen appearing on your screen, and you should be able to answer your question. So the question is simply, when do you think the quantum computer will impact you in your business? It could be on a positive side. So as mentioned by Bruno, of course, the quantum computer allows to run new algorithm much faster than it is today with classical computers, and also you've seen the security impact. So so we will I will give you time to answer. We have now a few answers. So it's interesting. We see a split of roughly 30% for the first three questions. So 30% now, 30% in 3 years, and 30% in 6 years. Thank you for answering the survey, and don't hesitate to use the question also menu so that you can ask your question during the presentation, and also, of course, at the end of the presentation. So I will now share my presentation, and we'll continue with real life implementation. So you should see now my screen. Share. Yes, thank you. So Bruno introduced the principles effectively of quantum security, and we started as ID Quantique to deploy already a quantum key distribution solution 10 years ago with the Geneva state for e-voting, and since then we continue to develop and to roll out quantum key distribution for specific applications, whether it's in the finance, banking, government sectors. But clearly, a lot of our activity is secret, and we cannot share. We are lucky, however, to have been part of a project which is called OpenKD, European project. So here we are involved with SIG in Geneva, Mt Pelerin, and ID Quantique. Equinix joined as an in-kind supporter providing hosting in Geneva. So I will explain what we have done in the scope of this project. So there are two use cases. I will present the first use case, which is data center interconnection, which is one of the most common use case today using quantum cryptography and quantum keys. And a second use case will be presented later by Bruno regarding the Quantum Vault project. So let me start now. On the principle of the data center interconnection, as you understood from Bruno, the part that is at risk is really the key exchange between two locations. And today it's using frequently Diffie-Hellman or RSA, which will be broken by the quantum computer, and are at risk, already identified at risk for long life data. So the idea is to replace Diffie-Hellman or RSA with the quantum key distribution, the quantum key exchange. So that's what we do between data centers. The idea clearly is to secure data for the long term, where between data centers, obviously, there are a lot of data that are transferred. So it's especially important to start securing these links. And that's what we have done with our partner as well, ADVA, in the scope of this OpenKD project. So it's combining layer 1 encryption with quantum keys. So I will present you more detail about that. The interest part is that there is no impact on the performance of the data connection, because it's a low latency solution using layer 1 encryption, low overhead, and no impact on the link availability. You don't need any human intervention for the key management. And the benefits, clearly, as mentioned earlier, is forward secrecy for data with long-term sensitivity and conditional security of the encrypted link. So how does it work in more details? Here on this slide, we see effectively that we separate the data layer from the key distribution layer. So that's the first point, which is clearly important, is instead of transmitting your keys with your data, you actually transmit them out of band. So using on the quantum channel, using a separate wavelength or a separate fiber. And then we exchange the keys using a standard interface, REST API, standard proposed by ETSI, and the encryptors can request keys whenever they need on both locations simultaneously to do the encryption. That's the idea of adding QKD on top of existing encryption solution. So how the keys are used by the network encryptors? It's combined. It's not replacing fully and changing dramatically the way the encryption is done. First, we continue to use AES 256, which is recognized as quantum safe today. So we leverage existing symmetric cryptography, but we avoid using asymmetric cryptography, which is especially at risk from quantum computers. And we combine the quantum key with the session key provided by the encryptor, and we built what we call a super session key that will be used in AES 256. This is the principle. Then each vendor is free to combine the quantum keys as they wish, but on our side, ID Quantique, we provide the quantum keys whenever it's requested to the quantum node. So as I explained, the main advantage are out of band key management. Out of band key exchange. So replacing RSA or Diffie-Hellman for the key exchange. The keys are probably secure and probably random, as you understood from Bruno. We use a random number generator also to generate the quantum key, and no need to manipulate the keys. The keys are generated, sent from Alice to Bob, from A to B, and used for encryption, decryption automatically without human intervention or human error. And we can increase the key rotation that is used for encryption. We can decide how frequently, typically in our case, ADVA equipment decides how frequently the key needs to be changed. So it can be on the day, on the hour, on the second if needed. So if we look at the physical view of the solution, so we find at the bottom the Cerberus 3 QKD device provided by ID Quantique, and the quantum and service channel connecting the two devices, so allowing for the quantum communication. Then you find the standard interface, as I mentioned, connecting to exchange the keys between the QKD node and the ADVA encryptor. So in this case, we use ADVA FSP 3000 with the 5TC card, which is actually the standard 10 gig encryption card, using AES-256. If we go and look at logical view, that's similarly of what we've seen before. You see the quantum exchange between the QKD nodes. The keys are used as a supersession key in the encryptors of ADVA. So in this project, we work primarily with ADVA. There are other partners in the OpenKD project, but we have started to work and we are working with different network vendors. So in your case, depending on the network vendor you use, the idea is that we are working towards is to add QKD as an option to existing rolled out solutions, so you don't need to change your network layer if possible. So we work with Seneta's Thales encryptor partnership with IDQ, the CN Centauris series 6000 9000. ADVA I mentioned, Cisco and Fortinet. So we can run, the trend is that we see more and more network devices are developing interfaces to use quantum keys. So it's in the same trend as what we see with in the cloud with bring your own key. Here it's bring your own encryption key. So either using this REST API or using, in some cases, proprietary interfaces. And then we develop this proprietary interface as well on the QKD node so that we can exchange keys. So if we look more specifically in Geneva, we deployed first, I think it's the first European at least, connecting data centers together. So Equinix data centers are carrier neutral, as you know. Some of you are Equinix customers. So we decided to connect these data centers so that you could ask a cross connect to Equinix and test on your own the use of quantum keys. So at least from proof of concept, I will show you in more details, but it's possible to leverage what has been done to test in your own environment quantum keys. So I give here indicate which data center are connected today. If needed, we can of course connect more, but today, so the two Geneva Equinix data centers are connected. The fiber is provided by SCJ, and we, for all data centers, by the way, and SCJ is also offering us free hosting as part of this OpenKD project. So I think also I want to thank SCJ for their collaboration on this project. They helped us a lot. We find also well-known location in Geneva for the ones that are in Geneva. Safehost, IBM, Gigaplex, and CERN are also connections which are sites, that are connected through the quantum key network. So this year we have a window of opportunity of testing these quantum keys with the possibility eventually to subscribe to a service in a second step. So the locations I mentioned, SIG is the central node of the Quantum Vault project. It's also one of the data center location connected, and the two main data centers in Geneva, Equinix data centers, and you find the other ones that I mentioned. So in terms of proof of concept, the idea is that we can leverage the QKD nodes that are currently deployed in the data centers to set up key exchange and key sessions to different devices. So one node typically supports up to 80 sessions. So it gives us room to test up to 80 use cases within a data center, which is more than enough. We hope to have more than two already in place today. And the way it works is that we set up a dedicated session, of course, with authentication. secured authentication, and HTTPS for the key exchange today, as defined by the in the HC REST API specification. And so a QKD node can be shared between today, at least for proof of concept, between different customers or different use cases. In the medium term, or if you are willing to have a customer is willing to have a dedicated link, of course it's possible, and it's actually what is deployed by our customers usually. They have a dedicated fiber link, a dedicated QKD device on both sides, and they can leverage the use of QKD for different applications. So as I mentioned, we work with different vendors, and there are different use cases possible. You can do encryption at layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. You can also use the keys for Quantum Vault project, as it will be explained by Bruno. So it gives you an overview of what has been done in Geneva. Don't hesitate to contact us if you are interested to implement and test quantum key usage within your IT network ecosystem, especially if you're already located in this location that I mentioned, like Equinix data center or ACJ. And we can, of course, also look at connecting specific location if you need. That's the introduction for my part. Thank you for your attention, and I will look at questions in parallel. And hand over to Bruno. Bruno, I will give you back the control.
Okay, thank you. So let me, sorry, just a few seconds. Okay, so now you should see. So thank you, Jean-Sébastien. So a quick introduction here to the Quantum Vault. So far, you see that quantum key distribution were used for data in transit. When you want to send data from one point to another, you need to encrypt it in order to make sure it remains confidential. And a good way to do that is symmetric key, and QKD can offer the exchange of the symmetric key. However, there are other things which we need in data security. It's also data at rest. And I think maybe the easiest way to understand it in a few words is to go to the idea of cryptocurrencies. If you have cryptocurrencies, the value you have, everything you have in your cryptocurrency is contained in your private key. If anybody can steal your private key, basically steals your money. So the most valued part of all the data is actually the key which gives you access. And then you expand it. It's not only for cryptocurrencies, it's for blockchain in general. And of course, it can also be for any kind of a cryptographic asset. So the most valued part of your data is basically the key which opens the data. And that's really what we thought about. And that's the story of the Quantum Vault, of how to use QKD to improve the security of your data at rest. Sorry, yes. So just one first example is the data you have, the keys you have are so valued that you put them in what is called an HSM, sorry, which is a hardware security module. So this contains all your keys. And you do it in such a way that this system should be safe. However, even if it's safe, you need some kind of backup. Because if something happens to your HSM, you will use your keys. So you need to be able to back up your keys, and preferably in a distant location. So somehow you need to take the keys which you have here and send them somewhere else over a line which, of course, you cannot guarantee will be secure. And that's the idea of the Quantum Vault. The first idea is that instead of using any kind of line, you use a line which is secured by QKD. So the keys are now used, guaranteed to be sent on securely using QKD. You mix, it's called a one-time pad. You mix your key with a quantum key, and then you send it over a secure line. And then what is really interesting here is that although the HSMs here are physically separated, logically, it's exactly as if they were together, because the transaction between this point and this point is guaranteed completely secure. It's called information theoretically secure. So that's the first step, is really QKD can be used simply to make a kind of backup of your keys in a physically distant location, which is actually logically at the same place. And then you expand it with the quantum vault. The quantum vault will go one step further and say, okay, backup is not so good. Simple backup like that may not be enough, because then somebody taking control of one of the two systems have actually all the keys. So if somebody attacks your HSM or the backup HSM, he have exactly the same keys. So what we would like is to be able to do backup without copying the keys, without duplication. That's really the idea behind the quantum vault. And we do that by using what is called Shamir secret sharing, and we will use quantum key distribution on top of that. And let me just show you how this works on a simple graph. So you have here the HSM. Instead of sending the key to all the other locations, we first split the key. And in Geneva, this is of course something we have, which is implemented today in Geneva. We split the key, we choose a factor of 5. So we have 5 different locations, and we send a fifth of the keys. I mean, not a fifth of the key, but a part of the key in all these locations. And the Shamir secret sharing scheme we decided to use was 3 out of 5, which means that in order to reconstruct the key, you need to have the 3 parts. If you have less than 3 parts, you cannot reconstruct the key. And if you have 3 or more, you can reconstruct perfectly the key. So whenever you have a key, you split it, send it to each of the nodes. And of course, all the links here are totally secured with QKD. So again, also, this part and this part are physically at different locations. You could even say that logically, it's exactly the same. And that gives you a perfect security. And of course, if somebody attacks 1 or even 2 of your storage nodes, it doesn't really matter. Of course, you can reconstruct the keys from the 3. So if something happens to one of the nodes, you know something's wrong, and you have time to act. For example, bring back the key to a special location, have a kind of emergency operation of your system, and so on and so forth. You will have policies to tell you what you should do in case of a problem, but you will know and you will have time to react. And that's really the idea of the quantum vault. And this is a test bed which is now implemented in the Geneva area through all the nodes which Jean-Sébastien discussed about. I think we reached the end of the time we had for the webinar. So I think I give back to Jean-Sébastien for the question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Effectively, thank you all for attending. I will open the floor now if you want to ask questions. So I noticed I overrun slightly, but you can ask your question anyway, also, of course, offline. I will open now to all of you. If you want to unmute, you should be able to unmute and ask questions. And I will ask a poll, the last poll today. Did the webinar met your expectations? So then you can answer live if you want, and prepare your questions if you have any. Let me check. I see a question on the chat.